I like to share my opinions with you guys, even if it's an unpopular opinion. I still think it's valid for people to hear it and to share some thoughts. So when I was, you know, 6, 8 months ago mixing, I was very convinced that analog summing was so much better than mixing in the box. I was very convinced that not only analog summing, but the gear chain I was using was superior to mixing in the box. Let's fast forward to today. For some reason, I was having a conversation with somebody recently about what they were going to buy next, and it occurred to me how much better I've been able to sleep over the last few months. And I had to trace it. Why is it I'm able to sleep better at night now? And I realized it really breaks down to the fact that I haven't thought about buying any analog gear in about that same amount of time, months. And then I had to kind of extrapolate this thought further. And I realized what happened to me is I put the focus for me on what I think is most important, which for me is spending money on the room. That's why when I moved into this new room, you look around, I have treatment all over the place, literally all over the place. They say over-treatment isn't a bad thing, and I agree. I don't think it is. And that's what I did. I over-treated this place like you wouldn't believe. So there's treatment up everywhere. And if you've seen some videos of me unboxing and stuff, you'll see it's on the ceiling, it's on the walls. I got gobos on gobos, and they could surround this whole room if I want. So this is the point. That's where I put a lot of money to make my room sound great because I'm not somebody who can mix in headphones at the moment. I don't like to say I can't and this and that, but I tried for years, multiple pairs of headphones, many headphones. Never found one that was just like, oh, yeah, this works. For me, as soon as I put on headphones, I separate myself from the world. I can no longer mix as well. We all hear different. I am by no means saying that nobody can mix on headphones or that it's bad. You may be able to. That's just not me. So the more we do this, the more we learn ourselves, and the more we realize maybe sometimes how much we're different or we hear different than other people. So what I realized is I need monitors that are good. So I put money into the room and into monitoring. Believe me, I think everything on the way in is extremely important to make your sound better. Certain things happen when the signal is still a voltage that just don't really seem to happen all in the box the same way. So I believe on the front end, that's the recording end, there's absolutely a value to buying gear. But if your focus is mixing and you're going to dedicate to be a great mixing engineer, great mastering engineer, in my opinion, it was super important to me. Once I took my summing out of the chain, I realized the summing's not doing that much. Must be these other pieces of gear. Took that out of the chain and I realized, okay, the gear is doing the thing. It was just a SSL Fusion because I was slimming down. SSL Fusion and a Neve Master Bus processor. In the other order, I did Master Bus processor first into the Fusion. And then back in through the converters, right? But what I realized was the summing wasn't really the magic. It wasn't really the magic. It was the gear that was sounding better than I was able to achieve with plugins, which then put the focus on, okay, it's really me who's not able to do it with plugins. Because what happens is when you have a piece of gear, you focus on what I can do with this piece of gear. And then imagine you had two plugins. Like I had two pieces of outboard at that time. Imagine I had two plugins. You'd get to know every bit of in and out of what you could do with those. And then you'd do the most you could do. You'd figure out the best you could get out of it, and that's what you'd get. Well, that's what I did with the gear, and I think that's the good thing about gear is that it forces you to get the most out of it because it's not logical to assume you're just going to keep buying gear for $5,000 a pop, $6,000 a pop, $4,000 a pop, and just, keep buying it and never really using any of it to figure out how you can get the most out of it. Like that's not so logical. So you buy gear, you get the most out of it. But what I realized was I must learn how to get what I'm getting from this in the box because it's a question of a gap in understanding, a gap in learning to be able to get that from the box. So when I learned more and more about how to get what I was missing and dove further and further into it, what I realized is at least I put the focus on me, on what I am capable of based on comparing it to what the gear was giving me. In other words, how close can I get to this based on my understanding? And there was a little bit missing there because I was relying on the gear. See, the problem with the gear is that you wind up always thinking that it's not you, it's the gear. Even if you think you are great, you're still thinking, I need another piece of gear to give me a little bit more than I could do without it. I need something else to take me over the hump. My mixes are okay, but imagine if I had a console for 30, 40, 50 grand. Then what would it be? There's that constant plaguing thought that just makes your mind say, I need more to achieve. And what I realized is there's things like plugins. We are always going to need plugins. Whether you have gear or not, there will be an advancement in some kind of technology as time goes through where you'll have to get the thing. You want the thing. You want the benefit of whatever it's doing. There's certain things that are able to be achieved in plugin form that are extremely difficult or impossible to achieve in an analog world. So you're never going to get away from needing some plugins, always. But the investment on plugins is substantially less than the investment on gear. So what I realized was I can't ever get away from spending some money here and there on stuff when it comes out that's new that I want in a plugin form, in a digital form. I'm always going to kind of need that. But when it comes to a piece of gear, once you go down the rabbit hole of, wow, this piece of gear does something I can't get anywhere else. Once your mind goes there, you are now in this world, it's like a virtual reality world you're in where no matter what, you got to get other things to improve more. You got to keep getting other things. You got to figure out, we got to search, got to research, look at all the blogs, the posts, the videos. What's that next missing thing? What am I missing? Where is it? On Reverb? Is it on eBay? Where do I gotta go? And that whole thing is draining. It actually prevents you, in my opinion, from learning as much as you possibly can about why you're not able to get the sound you're looking for without buying anything. It prevents that. And like I said, if there is an investment, it's a small investment in a plugin or something. A lot of people will tell you plugins, it's a scam, it's this and that. A lot of plugins do very similar things, but in no way, shape, or form is it a scam to give you a tool that works in a different way as another tool, even if it sounds exactly the same. If it works in a different way, that might gel with how you think better. So I'm not a fan of the difference between this is so slight compared to this. And, a lot of stuff overlaps, layers on top of itself, and maybe you don't need tons of things to do the same thing. But that's not the point. Like I said, even if the way the GUI set up is different, so the knobs are different, so when you turn it gives you a different result, that might work better for you. So there's always a reason to do, to give you a good example, Chad Blake likes the 1081. I don't personally use a 1081, but the way he uses it makes sense to him. And I would use something else to achieve that. So do I need the 1081? No. But if I wanted to work in a similar way that he works, with the mental process that goes along with how he works, I might like a 1081. But I own a 1073. I own the API 550B. I could get it done without it in a different way. Not to mention things like Pro Q3, where you could just dial in exactly what's going on if you want. There's so many options. But what I'm saying is, how do you prefer to work? In my opinion, is how you prefer to work is secondary almost to this concept that you need to learn how to get the missing pieces that don't exist on your puzzle to be there. And for me, I took a huge leap forward in understanding when I pulled the gear out of my workflow, because it forced me to learn more. And it also forced me to stop wasting time thinking about what I need next. And it also gave me more confidence, because the way I look at it is, when you deliver stuff that sounds great, you feel good the people you're delivering the music to feel good. Everybody feels good. But when you feel like it's because you're relying on something to do it that you can't recreate without that thing, that's going to haunt you a little bit. I believe it does. Now, some people it might not haunt. Some people are just always going to believe that that's okay or whatever. And there's no right or wrong. It haunted me. That haunted me. And I have to tell you, when I took out the 50-60 summing from my, workflow, and I used to jam that thing. I mean, I looked at it like the more I could get out of this, the better. So, I wasn't ever hitting it too hard, but I was driving it as hard as you could drive something when I needed to and backing it off when I needed to. I was just trying to get everything I could out of it to really see if this thing is a magic that I'm missing or not. And my determination was that it wasn't. My determination was that it's actually the other pieces outside of this summing box that were actually working more to my advantage. That was my determination. Everybody here is different, and everybody focuses on different things. I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I'm not saying there's no justification for whatever you do. There might be. But you also got to realize this, that as soon as you invest in things and make purchases, you are now biased. Because at the very least, in the corner of your mind, you need to justify that you bought something. So there's always an inherent bias. That's why it took me a long time to actually get out from under this thinking that I need the stuff, because I bought it already. So once I had it, it was easy to justify it. And as soon as I decided I need to make a change, I realized the money for me is better spent into what I can hear. Make it so that I can hear as good as I can possibly hear. Because that guy Furch, who just did a video on the Produce Like a Pro channel, he said it best. So I'm going to credit him for it. He said it's not about, when you mix bass, a lot of people think it's hard. It's not hard to mix bass. It's hard to hear bass in a room that's subpar on monitoring that's subpar. It's hard to hear bass. It's not hard to mix it. And that's why people assume it's hard to do things. It's mostly because what can they hear? So I've always been a huge proponent for this. That's why one of the first pieces of gear I bought was a Trin-Off, because I knew hearing, there's nothing more important. Going from Barefoot 01s to upgrade to a better speaker was so long in the making for me. Like, I really needed to do that. And that is where the money deserves to be spent first, in my opinion. In other words, even if I bought gear down the line, the monitoring should have been sorted first. The room should have been sorted first, because great monitoring in a bad room doesn't help either. So if the room is destroying what you're hearing, the monitoring ain't going to do nothing. You could have the best monitors in the world. It's still going to sound like a toolbox. So my thought was, we put up room treatment. I spend money on monitoring. Then what? What do we do next? And in my opinion, any money I need to spend here and there on plugins is a given. I would have had to spend anyway. So you can't rule out you're going to have to be doing that through time. As technology gets better, going to have to. So that is always a cost. The monitoring, the room. And boy, do I feel like I made the right call, because that's how you know when you can sleep at night. That if you could sleep at night, you made the right call. And never am I sitting here thinking, I need another piece of gear. What I actually think is the opposite. I think once I come out of the box for anything now, it's going to open this whole can of worms of, well, I might as well use the Fusion again. I might as well use the MVP again. I might as well use the 50-60. So as soon as I start thinking in that way, I might as well go out and buy a Manley Verimue. I might as well buy a Curve Bender. I might as well go out and buy, discontinued products that are going to be worth more later. It's an investment. Yeah, I mean, we could justify all the stuff. Might as well. That's why it's so important for me not to be able to hone my skills, develop, and get as good as I possibly can using the tools that so many guys who do work that gets released, that's on the top level, use. And I'm specifically talking about the ones that mix in the box. And every year there's more and more. It used to be where every like one guy who mixed in the box, there's 3 that didn't. But today, these days, I think it's closer to 50-50. I really do. And there's not a survey out there of everybody, so I don't think it's possible to ever know. But I'm just saying, more and more all the time. And that's not happenstance. And I don't even think it's a question of volume either. I think it's really a question of mind state, mental, where are you mentally? Are you someone who believes that the digital world is just not there? Because that's something that's just a part of you, that you believe that. You would have to believe that the digital world is more than capable, and also believe that your analog gear is superior in order for you to be unbiased. If you believe the digital world ain't there, and that's just your belief, without experiencing only the digital world for a long time, then I don't even think you're, totally open-minded. Because any inherent bias at all is going to pull you in one way or the other. And I don't think it's better or worse. If you watched videos from me a while ago, I made it a point to make a good parallel. I thought that it's so easy for me to get done with a mix because I knew what I could get out of the gear I had, and I knew what I needed to do in order to achieve it. So in other words, I was doing as much as I possibly could with the gear I had. And I always knew what to do to achieve the same thing. And you could push certain things maybe harder in the analog world, and there's more forgiveness. And that's the biggest difference. It's not that you can't do it in the box, it's that there's less forgiveness. Whereas with the analog stuff, it rounds it for you because of physical limitations, is how I look at it. Whereas in the digital world, if you push things too hard, you will know about it. Whereas in the analog world, it may work anyway. And that's the thing. That's why you hear guys talking about mixing on an Neve console. We just boosted everything. We never cut anything. We just pushed it all up. And when everything was in the red and jamming, it still worked. More forgiveness. That's how I translate that. There's more forgiveness in the gear. But that doesn't mean you can't achieve the same thing once you understand that the forgiveness ain't there. You got to make it work knowing what the limitations are before it starts to sound like, All right? So I hope this made some sense. I like to, go off, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say because it's not one-sided. And in no way, shape, or form am I trying to tell you that you buying stuff wasn't good. It was probably good because you'll get the most out of it. Just don't believe that you need it to win. Believe that if you do need it to win, you're just not really honing in on what you're missing in order to achieve what it's doing. Because once you believe that, the spotlight shines on you and then you fix what you're missing. You learn more. You get back to work. You don't sit there doing as much as you can with what you have, which is basically hitting a wall. You can only get as good as the stuff you have, and that's it, because you won't learn more. So I'm just trying to stress learning is key. And it's possible you just are missing certain pieces of information to be able to get what you want out of digital. It's possible. So leave it in the comments, questions, answers. I love to hear about it, especially answers. All right? You're trying to make a flank steak, pinwheel flank steak wrapped with peppers and onions around it or something. Tell me how to do it. I'm not sure. I got to ask. So anyway, talk to you guys soon. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. Take it easy.